Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about alternative therapies for PTSD. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a thinker, and we need to really think about it. So, thankfully, I have my special guest here, Trudie. Thank you so much, Trudie. And we are going to be breaking this down and really thinking about this. So, I guess I got to dive right into it, Trudie. When you think of PTSD, what does that make you think about?
For me, I actually don't like to say PTSD because I don't see it as a disorder. I see it as PTS, which is post traumatic stress, and somebody who has experienced that. And for me, that was really big in my workplace, and I was actually medically retired due to that.
Yeah, and I like how you said that. Like, you know what? I don't like that label. I reject it because that is what people need to start thinking about. Like, you know what? It's okay if society decides to label it as a disorder, as a disease. Oh, that even gets more cringing because how can you tell somebody that this is a disease, that this is a disorder when this is continuously happening? I mean, I guess my next question is, when did you realize that alternative therapies worked for you?
From the very, very beginning. So I was diagnosed in November of 2021, and immediately when I went to see the psychiatrist, automatically he wanted to put me onto antidepressive, anti anxiety medications. And I said, no, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. This is a band aid fix, and I don't want to feel numb. I actually want to
Yes.
feel and get to the root of whatever was going on for me. So, yeah, from the very, very beginning, I said, no, let's look for alternative means of a way of healing myself.
Yeah, I like that because people don't realize that some of these pharmaceutical medications, they really make you feel numb. And one of my problems for so many years, and still I think till this day, is that I rather try the holistic route, the alternative routes of trying to self-medicate and self-heal myself before forcing myself to deal with whatever the pharmaceuticals have to give me. Because usually 9 times out of 10, you can resolve your issue. You know what I mean? Like I've found out that you could really resolve your issue if you don't necessarily go with the pharmaceutical or the way that the Western doctors tell you it's black and white to be because it's so frustrating, right? It's like it's frustrating. It makes you feel like they put you in this category and it's like, no, I'm not just this. I'm so much more, so I guess it leads to my next question. Like, when did you realize like your journey and your life has just altered and changed in a positive way, I guess?
So I tried a number of different alternative therapies from the very get-go, like I said, and that included everything from deep self-hypnosis, kinesiology, mind work, meditation. I did cognitive behavior therapy in a psychiatric clinic. I went through a whole bunch of different things, which led me to breath work, ice baths, meditation, all that type of thing. And nothing seemed to gel. Like I liked all the different modalities, but nothing seemed to actually give me a 100% positive shift. And
Yeah.
so at the end of 2022, so about a year of doing all this work, I made the decision to actually go on a hike. And I had never done any sort of, I had done day hikes of anywhere between like 10 and 15 kilometers, which I think is about 6 to 10 miles for you guys. And I'd never done any overnight camping. And then I decided to do this big through hike of about 600 miles for you guys. It was 1,000 kilometers for me.
Wow, that is amazing. I think that is beautiful. When you took that hike, what was your mind going through? Were you just like at peace, or how were you processing it all? Because I mean, there's so much to process, let's be honest, when you go on a hike. So what were you processing?
Well, for the first time in sort of nearly 18 months, it gave me in the planning process, it gave me a sense of direction and purpose. So at the lowest of low of suffering my PTS, I'd become agoraphobic and also manic depressive. So I literally couldn't get out of bed, let alone get out of my house.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this was a way of me actually just being able to get again. It was started off with a challenge of walking 3 kilometers a day to get my daily coffee as a way of getting me out of the house. And then all of a sudden, I decided to do this big through hike. And so the planning gave me purpose. And all of a sudden, I felt like, okay, this is giving me something to think about other than
Mm,
everything I'm going through. But
mm,
then once I hit the track, I was like, what the hell have I done? Because it was like, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I'm ready to quit. I was ready to quit, I was ready to quit day 2, but I think day 9 was my big day on the track that I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. But I kept going and rode this roller coaster of emotions and dealt with injuries because I did this whole track as well without any medication and without any audio distractions. So no music podcasts or audio books. It was just me, myself, and I on the track.
goodness. I give you props because I don't think I would do that. I think I would probably give up on myself and just be like, yo, Mitzi, we need to just go pack it up. We are not built like this. We cannot just walk up. I won't even have the right hiking shoes too. And just my feet will be blistered. It would be a hot mess. Because I think the one time that I actually tried hiking, I was with a friend and he convinced me to do this. I wish I never did because once I got home, I slept for almost like 13 hours because my mind and my body was super exhausted. So I couldn't even imagine with you 1,000 kilometers. Oh my goodness, how many days did you sleep?
So I did the course over 64 days, which included a number of zero rest days in the track towns that are along the way.
Oh my God, zero rest days. Continue, please.
Yeah, no, the zero rest days are the 0 days, what they call where you don't actually go walking. So it's a rest day in a town. So I think I did 7 of those out of the
Oh,
64, but the rest of the days were all 100% hiking. And the thing I learned for myself was that the only person that can get you from A to B, so on this particular track, which is in my home state of Western Australia, it's called the Bibbulmun Track, and they have a series of little huts that you stay in. And so I was walking from hut to hut each day, and the kilometres differed between, I think, from about 15 to about 25 kilometres a day. But what I learned is that the only person that was going to get me from the first camp to the second camp was me. No one could walk it for me. No one could give me a lift. I couldn't call a friend, hey, come and help me out. It was literally me. So when you get back to those basic survival mechanisms of, eating, sleeping, hiking, it became that was my healing, that was my therapy because I was stuck with my own thoughts and feelings throughout the
yeah.
day and I had to deal with them. But I also had to deal with getting to camp. So you had to just ride this roller coaster of not only the terrain, but also just your feelings and emotions.
Goodness, I could only imagine. It really brings back trusting yourself. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's you. You have to get yourself to the next camp. You have to get yourself to the next objective, to the next resources that you can use because you said you didn't have no medication. It was just you, yourself. I mean, did you have any protective like gear, water packs, a knife, just in case you have to protect yourself from a wild animal? I mean, I've heard some crazy stories about animals in Australia. So you took a 64 days just walking in just I could only imagine lands and the types of animals that you encountered. That's terrifying in my mind. But for you, how did you encounter any wild animals? Did you
I
protect yourself?
did. And look, it's not as bad as it seems. I know that there's lots of stories about Australia and that we have some of the deadliest animals. But walking in the coastal section, I did have snakes literally on my path across the day over many days. And most of the time they just move out of the way. They hear or they feel the vibrations of your boots and your hiking poles coming towards them, and they tend to just move. And I was quite lucky that I didn't have one just lying in the middle of the track. I
Goodness.
come across spiders, like you go to use they have these long drop toilets, and yeah, I come across huntsmen in there. And then things like kangaroos, emus, all the bird life. You just see it there in nature, and you just most of the time they get scared of you, so they disappear.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad I'm glad you put it in that perspective because it gives me some like context that it's not how the social media and just media in general makes Australians animals so just ready to attack as soon as they see you. You know what I mean? Like that's how they make it seem like they're ready to fight and someone's gonna lose and it's probably gonna be you. You know what I mean? Like that's how they make it seem. So I'm glad that
Oh, that
you
was me last week. So last week I
uh-huh.
was driving home from the city, which is 4 hours away, and I hit a kangaroo with my car and it destroyed my car. So they can be lethal, don't get me wrong.
Oh my
But
goodness.
walking on the track, yeah, I didn't have any issues with any of the wildlife.
Like
And
and
they have,
you had the walking post too?
yes, always with a
That's good.
hiking pole. Yeah,
That's
it
good.
just keeps you stable. You're carrying a heavy pack on your back, and the
It-
hiking poles just make you more stable.
So since you were on the coastline, is it like a steady like ground or was it like oh mountainous or hilly or I mean how does it how describe the environment if you don't mind. I'm a
So I
visual person.
started
I'm
in
trying
the
to
southern
visualize it.
coast. That's
Ah,
okay. I started in the southern coast in Albany, and you walk along. So everything from cliff faces to walking through just coastal vegetation, through walking along beaches. There was like kilometers of beach walking, going up and down sand dunes. And then once you start leaving the coastline, you go up, starting in through. We have in the southwest of Western Australia, we have old forest, and the trees are like hundreds of feet tall. And so you start going up through the forest vegetation, and then you hit sort of an area of farming, and then you go through what we call Australian bushland. So
wow, that sounds
you get to
beautiful. You know,
experience it all.
yeah, that really is it. You really get to experience it all. There's wow, they really make Australia seem like a desert. You know what I mean? That's how they make it seem like it's just flatland, desert, dunes, things of that nature. But when you explain it in that way, I was like, wow, you have more than what they make it seem like. It makes me want to go out there, to be honest, because you gave me like a safe way, like, Bitsy, let's be realistic. But anyways, let's go back to the topic on hand. I'm sorry, I sometimes veer off course, but I'm curious, is there any other alternative therapies that you are thinking about trying out?
Not really at this particular point.
Mhm.
There are some probably more questionable ones that we won't get into on the podcast that I would love to just try and see how that goes. I've got a girlfriend, one of my best friends is a Reiki sound healer, energetics healer, and I do have sessions with her regularly. So that's really nice as well. But I think what I found for most on the hike was actually things like grounding and getting regular sleep and working with your circadian rhythm and just getting out into nature, getting sunlight. It's those simple things that I think we get so caught up in our everyday lives and sitting in offices or sitting in our cars or being inside on social media or sort of technology is that we forget to just go out and be in nature. And for me, that's probably what had been one of the biggest lessons is by constantly just, it's a daily routine to, where I can, I'm up with the sunrise so I can see the sunrise. Middle of the day, I'm out getting 10, 15 minutes of sunlight to do that. And then I try, where I don't suffer with insomnia and stuff, I try to go to bed at a reasonable hour. So
Yeah.
I find that just doing those things, and it's things that we took for granted, it's things I took for granted in my previous like roles and work situations that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what had me sort of, I think that's been one of my biggest healing modalities is just remembering to get back to the basics.
Yeah, and it sounds like it just comes back to putting yourself first again. You know what I mean? And when you put yourself first, giving yourself that time and being a little bit more compassionate with yourself, like, okay, this is what we're going to try today, or let's just focus on breath work. and let's just focus on this instead today. You know what I mean? Take it day by day. I think that's the biggest thing is because people feel like there's an end point. You know what I mean? Like one day it'll just all disappear, or one day it'll be done and I don't have to deal with that situation anymore. But I think it's more than that. You know what I mean? And I would love to know your thoughts on that.
100%. You never actually fully get over suffering with PTS, and anything can lead to flashbacks. So even just me hitting that kangaroo, like what was it, 2 weeks ago, it it brought back a whole bunch of other stuff that I'd been dealing with in the last couple of years. It started my insomnia again. It started flashbacks. It started the sleepless nights and waking from night terrors, and the anxiety in that moment. Because I spoke to other people, because we obviously live in the country and lots of people experience hitting a kangaroo. But for me, it almost took it to that next level because of the PTS. So it never fully goes away. But what I discovered in that moment was that I could operate using those things. So just being able to breathe through it, being able to I do a sensory sound check. So I basically, what can I see? What can I hear? What can I touch? What can I taste? What can I smell? And it's just that sensory thing that takes you out of the anxiety moment and brings you back into the here and now. And so it's all those little tools that I've learned along the way that are able to have me be in a situation and address that situation and move through it as opposed to holding on to it. And then the other thing is to move through the trauma. So our bodies store trauma, and if we don't basically get rid of that trauma and like move it out of our body, then that's where disease and
Yeah,
other issues start to happen. So that's what I found is that I came home, I went for a walk, I've been doing yoga, I've been doing other forms of exercise just to move that trauma out of my body and not sit with it.
exactly. And that's one thing I learned too is it's important to move your body and to get that trauma that's been sitting around and that's just stagnant in our body, just weighing us down, and we have to push it through and just move because we are always in motion. So our body needs to be in motion. So that means everything else inside of us need to be in motion because it gets too extreme. And when it's like this one lady I remember speaking to, she said that sometimes we are like a pendulum. You know what I mean? We're constantly going from one extreme to the next and we never find the balance. And it gets us unbalanced by not finding the balance. And it's nice to see that you were able to find that balance for yourself. And I just wish more people would think about this so that they can think about themselves and where they need to find that balance. You know what I mean? Because just because it works for one person, it may not work for another, like it happened with you. Certain things just weren't working for you, but then you found what worked. And when you found what worked, that's when you were like, yes, this is for me. And that's what more people need to do is realize you have something out there, but you just need to keep going. You need to just keep going and flowing. So I'm curious, as always, what would you tell your younger self if you could tell your younger self anything?
I think I would tell my younger self that she's got this no matter what, because I think we take for granted what we are actually capable of, and we always have self doubt and we always second guess. But if we just trust our own intuition and believe in our own power, then we can literally face anything in the world. And I know that, yeah, if I could go back and tell, my early primary self or my early adult self or even my teenager self at school that you've got this. And I think the one time I've actually been able to do that is I was a single mum. My children are older now, both adults, but I never doubted that I could raise my children. So I think if I sort of take on that belief in all aspects of my life, then yeah, I can face anything. But doing the bib track, I know that now I can pretty much take anything on. That
Of
was so
course.
outside my comfort zone.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it would be outside of my comfort zone. I'm trying to convince myself to one day do like a color run or a mud run or something like that because it's interactive and I don't feel like I'm actually running because I'm like going through things. You know what I'm saying? But I tried an obstacle course once and then it made me realize that I don't have the upper body strength to hold myself up. So I'm still working on the basics for that before I even get to that because it's like you said, sometimes you have to plan it to get yourself there. So when you're mentally prepared, you're actually physically prepared too. And we have let our physical body down because our mental capacity has failed us. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you said earlier that's when we start to get diseases and people don't realize that, you know what I mean? That heart disease didn't come always from certain things. Sometimes it came from stress. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not always by your food. Sometimes it's literally how you react to the world and how you accept to see the world at the same time. And people don't see that. And it's sad to say, but I guess that's the reason why you have a podcast and I have a podcast, and we're podcasters trying to make the world think about things differently, right?
100%. And that's I love in my podcast is talking to people, hearing their stories, because I think sometimes when you listen to somebody else's perspective and what they've been through, it makes you appreciate your own circumstances and your own life.
Yeah,
Because we all go through stuff, we all deal with stuff. It's just the extent and like how we react to it and how we move through it. And some people unfortunately get stuck in whatever they're dealing with and they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm always looking for that light and I'm always walking towards that light. And if I can, bring some other people with me on that journey, hold their hands and direct them towards the light, then, I'm making the world a better place.
exactly. That's exactly what I say. As long as it's one person, let's go on for the ride and let's do it. We got this, exactly like you said, we got this. And that's one thing I've always said is that you work with what you got. You know what I mean? Even if it's a little bit, you may think it's a little bit, but for somebody else, it's a whole lot. And it's also like you said about appreciating. Like I appreciate the fact that I only have to deal with hitting a deer while you have to hit a kangaroo that can possibly punch you to death. You know what I mean? Like my deers won't punch me to death. You know what I mean? But they can just ram me, but I can hopefully move. But man, I heard those kangaroos are fast and those punches, they're pure muscle. How does a kangaroo just get so defined like that? They're like bodybuilders. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I'm off topic again. Let me refocus. So, to start wrapping up the show, what can be words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking? Even though you already gave us so many great points to think on, what can be some lasting words?
I think one of the things that I realised when I was on the bib track, I'd walked around a particular bay and I remember looking at it from the beginning going, there is no way I could walk around this particular bay. It just looked way too far. And so when I got around it and I looked back, it's like back, not to question everything, not to see all your faults, flaws, but look back to see how far you've come. And then when you look forward, even though you may not see the path, even though you may not know the direction that you're taking or what's going to happen on the way, just trust that you're on the right path and it is going to get you where you're going.
I love that. Just trust that you're on the right path. Goodness, that is so hard to do sometimes. It's really hard to do when you're in comparison or when you're in doubt or when you're in those moments of isolation and just trying to figure out your purpose and your place. So to have those words to keep on thinking, I mean, I think they're beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if anybody would like to know more about Trudie, because why wouldn't you want to know more about Trudie after listening to this conversation? If you'd like to know about more about Trudie, I have her information on my website. You could click right there under our conversation and find all the goodness that she has to offer and check out her podcast. All right. Find out these real testimonies with real people because if you're already here thinking with my real people, then go to hers and think about with her real people as well. So, with that being said, always, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.